Hi everyone, this is Dr. Pavan Soni, and as I promised you before, I'm taking you through the various chapters of my latest book, Design Your Career. So, very quickly, the chapter titles. The first is Life is Long, Pace It Well. Deserve before you desire. That's the second chapter. Own your career or somebody else will. Focus on high leverage activities. Think strategically and act decisively. And finally, leadership is a choice not everyone can make. It's a very small book, and the idea is to write high density content which makes sense to the audience. All right, cool. So let's start with the first chapter, which is Life is Long, Pace It Well. And I start this book with a quote from Eckhart Tolle, who is my spiritual guru. And I'd strongly recommend you reading two of his books, which is A New Earth and The Power of Now. And the quote from Eckhart Tolle is, "Nothing ever happened in the past that can prevent you from being present now." So instead of going back to the past, let us focus on what do we have right now. And I'll straight away read from the book as to why it is critical to understand life is long. See, we are possibly living in the longest life expectancy of mankind, and we had people before us who did not have that kind of life expectancy, but nonetheless they went about doing some phenomenal job. So I start the chapter talking about Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Charles Darwin, Rabindranath Tagore, Albert Einstein, Pablo Picasso, Stephen Hawking, Confucius, and Gautam Buddha. All of them have lived very, very long lives. But at the same time, you have the likes of Mozart, Alexander the Great, Van Gogh, Bruce Lee, Swami Vivekanand, Heath Ledger of Dark Knight. All of them lived a very short life. So in either case, whether you're living a longer life or a shorter life, what really matters is what you do in your life. And what a big tragedy it is that while we are living longer lives, we are not really making it count. And I think that is what the appeal in this first chapter is, that life is long, pace it well. So there is no point in rushing through life. Okay, there's absolutely no point in rushing through life, because you have to have targets, but allow those targets to be achieved in a very organic fashion. For example, if my target is to write books, and if I rush into writing books and I give myself this very sort of fictitious objective that I must write a book or I must publish a book every 2 years, I may still do it, but I'll not enjoy doing it. And there'll be a day when all that struggle that I'm going through will start reflecting in the quality of my writing, and that is not certainly a good idea. Okay, so the book says that we have this propensity that we want to be somebody by the age of 40, and I've heard a lot of people saying that I want to retire by the age of 40. And I've not seen people retiring by the age of 40. On the contrary, I have seen a lot of people dying by the age of 40. And the reason why people start developing physical discomforts and medical issues by the age of 40 is because they have given themselves this target that unless they become somebody by the age of 40, they're nobody. And that social validation is essentially killing them. So if you have a life about 70, 80 years, why do you have to give yourself a target that I need to retire by 40? And pace it well. Whatever you can achieve by 40, as well you can achieve by 50. But at least you have the health with you. Okay. So one of the sections in the book is called as Know Your Prime Movers. And I've identified 4 prime movers that one could think of. The first is fear. Fear essentially means that I have to do it otherwise. So a lot of people are waking up in the morning, heading to the office, taking care of their children, or maybe listening to the bosses and clearing emails or writing exams because of the fear. And fear is a very big motivation. But the problem with fear as a motivation is that it drains you up, it burns you up. Okay, so not a good motivation, but certain times you have to have fear as a motivation. Then greed, that could be the second prime mover, greed. Greed means that if I do, I'll become somebody, I'll achieve it. Okay, I'll become successful, I'll become famous, I'll become rich, etc. That's second prime mover, which is again good, but greed has no end to it. You do not know what is enough for you, and that is the problem with the greed. The third, which is slightly more saintly, is duty. Now, a mom cooks food for her son, perhaps because of duty. But moreover, a lot of people pull their day through and they do a lot of their work for a sense of duty. Now, duty is a good objective, at least better than both fear and greed. But the problem with duty is that it has a cutoff. The moment your duty is over, you are off from it. And in sense of duty, there is always a reciprocal expectation that because I'm doing my duty, I need to be rewarded fairly. And a fair reward, but nonetheless a reward. And the last prime mover you could have is love. Love is typically unconditional. As I said before, you love your child, not so much because your child would take care of you when the child grows up, because it's a lovely child, end of the story. You love, you're passionate about something, not because of fear or greed or duty, but you just do it. So as long as you identify that something in your life is there where the prime mover is love, things are okay. But if you realize that the entire life of yours, the prime mover is either fear or greed or a sense of duty, then I think there is a challenge. Okay, and the pandemic was a lovely excuse for us to really discover what is that we truly love, and I strongly believe that you should pick it up for yourself. Then I asked you the question that where is you in the whole scheme of things? You see, this may be slightly more pronounced in the Indian culture, but I think somewhere we have always been taught from the very beginning that if everybody around you is happy, only then you are happy. Okay, so which means that if they are happy, you are happy. But what I have gotten to realize in my life is that you have no obligation to make somebody else happy. This may be a very difficult thing to consume, but I believe that the only obligation you have is to make yourself happy and not anybody else happy. So as long as you can focus on that, but not at the cost of somebody else, because if you give yourself an objective that you have to make your mom happy or your dad happy or your spouse happy or your child happy, then I think you are just chasing a mirage and you are not letting them be responsible for their state of mind, which is very, very important. So I just start off with this very little diagram which is available in front of you, which is where are you in the whole scheme of things? And this might be slightly controversial, and a lot of frameworks and tools which I use in the book are quite controversial at it. But start with you. Put yourself at the center. It's not about being selfish. It's about paying yourself first. Because if you don't take care of your health in the pretext that you are taking care of somebody else's health, there'll be a day when this other person will be burdened with your health. And I don't want that to happen. I would like you to take care of yourself first. So the first is you. That's the core of it. And then you draw a circle and then you identify the children, parents, spouse, and somebody who is very significant. And then after that sort of membrane which is around you, the rest of the world is. And I strongly believe that if you take care of yourself, you take care of yourself physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, financially, if you take care of yourself well, only then you can be of anybody's help. Otherwise, you are a burden to everybody around you. And then the rest of the world keeps moving. It's okay. I mean, if your objective is to ensure that everybody appreciates you, then I think you're just setting yourself up for a tremendous amount of misery. And I give a lot of examples, right, from Nikola Tesla to Indra Nooyi, Elon Musk, etc., on how they went about developing a disposition in life where they have paid themselves first. And along the way, people will be upset with you, and that's something that you should be willing to live with, which is okay, I guess. Whether you do something or you don't do something, somebody will always be upset with you. So you better do something with your life. Then as one of my favorite tools, which is called as ignore, tolerate, and then confront selectively. I've spoken about this in past as well, which is called the ITC framework. And the idea is that almost 50% of what is happening to you or happening around you, you need to have a healthy disposition towards ignoring it altogether. If somebody brushes your car on the way to the office, there is no point in engaging with this person because nothing much happens except loss of your time. It's not worth it. Okay, and throughout the day, there are a lot of opportunities for you to get embroiled in, get engaged with. But if you can just choose to ignore them, a solid 50% of it, I think that's a very good starting point. About people and their behavior, my recommendation is don't ignore people, ignore their behavior. And keep in mind that people are behaving in a certain funny way or in a certain irritable manner because of situations rather than their own choice. So just ignore it. 40% is to be tolerated. So you ignore when the purpose of engaging is only ego satisfaction. So when somebody says something to you and you give it back, the idea is not to change the person, the idea is to satisfy your ego. So better these things be ignored altogether because you will live a lot light along the way. If you can't ignore and the purpose is to develop yourself, when something comes at you and you soak it up, That is where you have the T, which is tolerate. And I would say 40% of the remaining you can easily tolerate. Like when your child pushes you to really come back home early, spend some time with the child, you better not ignore it. You tolerate it and you work towards it so that you can become a better parent. Okay, when a teacher pushes you, like your music teacher push you to exercise more on or to practice more on a certain instrument, and you can't ignore it, you tolerate that. You tolerate that harshness because you improve it. So you ignore when the purpose is nothing, you tolerate when the purpose is self-development. And finally, the remaining 10%, which is the ultra-selective stuff, which is when you confront. You confront when you realize that the purpose is beyond you, to the larger society or somebody more important. So for example, if you see somebody being abused at the office, you can't ignore it for long, you can't tolerate it. You must stand up and confront it. And the reason I'm giving confrontation only 10% is because you should be very choosy about confronting. If you try to pick up anything and everything that comes your way in the way of confronting, then I think you're just burning yourself up. And you can do that only if you develop a thick skin. Now, I've spoken about that in my last book, which is Design Your Thinking as well, that for you to really go about bringing a significant change, you need to develop three attributes. The first is a clear head, which is knowing your priorities in life. As you grow in life, there'll be lot of forces acting at you, pulling your attention in different directions, but a clarity on what you can do and what you cannot do and what you should not do is extremely important. And that is what I mean by a clear head, which is your ability to prioritize. Then comes a thick skin. A thick skin is to be able to take insult in life. Now, if you can't take insult in life, if you can't take a bit of negativity in life coming from people, then I don't think you can do anything interesting, anything remarkable in your life. Because anybody and everybody who has challenged the status quo has faced resistance. But most of the resistance has come from outside. But at least there should not be any internal resistance, and that's something that you should avoid at all cost. But also a deep heart. So the trio of a clear head, thick skin and deep heart is very, very critical. And most people whom I talk to, they say that yes, I have a clear head to prioritize, I have a deep heart to empathize, but I don't have a thick skin to materialize. And as a result, they have wonderful ideas in life, but then they don't do much with their lives. Okay, slow down, for it doesn't matter. So if I give you an example, if you talk to a surgeon, for instance, and you ask the surgeon that when you go for a surgery, what do you think? That the patient must survive or the patient need not survive? Okay. You'll be surprised to know that most surgeons would go with the disposition that the patient need not survive. Okay. It's not that they don't care whether the patient survives or not. The point is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter does not mean I don't try. It does not matter means that there are things which are truly beyond your control. And if you really try to control too many things in your life, you realize one thing, that you are just creating stress for yourself and for people around you. And I'll read it, one very lovely line from Khalil Gibran, the author of Prophet. And Khalil Gibran says, your joy is your sorrow unmasked, and the self-same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears. And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Which means in every fruit of joy, there is a seed of sorrow, and inside every seed of sorrow, there is a fruit of joy. So the idea is that take life how it comes, not getting too hung up on things that it must happen. At least don't pressurize yourself, because the idea is to just go a little bit easy in life. So this is your chapter number 1. As I said, chapter is replete with a lot of amazing examples. I have not been discussing the examples in these videos to keep them brief. I have discussed the key frameworks, but I would strongly encourage you to go and check these examples for yourself. I hope this was useful, guys. Thank you so much.